Close your eyes and imagine Rome on a late afternoon. The sunset spreads over the Pantheon dome, dyeing the massive stone columns of the Colosseum in gold. The distant sound of church bells echoes, blending with the sound of hurried footsteps in the square. All of it is brilliant and magnificent, making Rome appear as the center of the world. But that is only the surface. Beneath that halo, hidden deep underground, exists another Rome. A Rome that few people talk about. There, tunnels crisscross for kilometers. Cold stone walls cover tombs, and secret symbols are carved to defy time. People call them catacombs. But they are not just for the dead. They were once places of refuge, places of prayer, places to light the glimmers of hope for persecuted communities. Not just catacombs. Rome's underground world is also fertile ground for secret sects. In the darkness, people gathered to worship Mithras, Isis, or Mother Cybele. Whispered rituals, mysterious symbols, oaths that no one but them could hear. All of this existed side by side with the glittering Rome above ground, like two opposing worlds, but closely linked. And from there, the questions rang out, heavier than the ringing of bells. Who created these catacombs? Why did they choose to live in the dark instead of in the sunlight? What rituals took place behind the closed stone doors? And what remains hidden to this day? The Rome you once knew is only half the truth. The other half lies deep beneath your feet, in the narrow, damp passages, where every wall is a message from the past. Come with me, slowly. Let your eyes adjust to the darkness. Because beneath the layers of stone and dust of time, Rome is still breathing, and telling us stories that are never quite complete. Part 1. Into the Dark. Exploring the catacombs' origin. Why the Romans chose underground. Imagine walking down a narrow, cold stone wall. The air is suffocating as if lacking oxygen. Each step echoes, lingering as if someone is following. This is no ordinary path. This is a door leading back 2,000 years, when the Romans first had to send their loved ones underground. In a crowded city like Rome, land above ground was extremely valuable. Large, well-lit plots were often reserved for the rich and powerful. The poor, the minorities, and especially the early Christians, they had no choice but to go underground. There, they found space that was cheaper, safer, and above all, away from the prying eyes of the authorities. But is the reason just practical? Not true. The ancient Romans had a strong belief in the afterlife. They believed that death was not the end, but only the door to a new journey. And perhaps the cold darkness of your heart will return to be the most suitable place to start the journey. Imagine a small family. The mother holds her child's remains tightly, trembling as she runs down the narrow stairs. The father holds a torch, lighting the way in the dark hallway. They find a small stone, put down the urn, and then cool down with a few lines. My child, even though the light is gone, love is still here. Thousands and thousands of such words still lie in the wall catacombs to this day. It was also in those tunnels that the first viewers found refuge. When the city's surface was full of danger, along with the fierce anger of the emperor, they sought the darkness to enhance their own brightness. There they prayed in whispers, taught their beliefs, and preserved the identity of a young religion. But not only the religion. Other signal exceptions should also choose land to build their temples. Mithraism, one of the most secretive sects, built underground churches, where people reenacted the eternal battle between light and darkness. It was in that closed space, lacking the breath of the sky, that they believed they were closer to the gods than ever before. The underground of Rome, therefore, was not just a place to bury bodies. It was a place to store desires, fears, and beliefs. A second city, an action song with Rome above ground, where people both found safety and faced eternity. And then we have to ask ourselves, if the underground was once a place of refuge, Could it also become a place of secrets that never wanted to be exposed? How many stories are there that we have never heard of among those endless tunnels? Life in death. Life in the world of death. Stop, listen, and imagine. You are standing in a narrow corridor, lined with tomb niches stacked on both sides like endless bookshelves. On each niche, a small stele is engraved with a name, sometimes just a few simple words, sometimes with a symbol, a fish, a vine branch, or a primitive cross. And in that darkness, you suddenly realize this is not a place of absolute silence. This was once an underground city where life still lurked among death. In the damp underground, people gathered. Sometimes they brought bread, wine, and shared memorial feasts, agape, as a way to connect with the souls who had gone before. The murmur of prayers echoed throughout the corridor, mixed with the dripping of water from the stone ceiling. The living sat among the dead, eating together, crying together, hoping together. On the walls, the frescoes in mineral colors still remain. There is a painting of the Good Shepherd holding a lamb, another depicting Jonah being swallowed by a whale, a symbol of resurrection. The colors have faded with time, but the emotions are still there, like the whispers of the trembling hands that painted them in the flickering light of an oil lamp. Imagine yourself as a child, born into a persecuted Christian community. You have never entered a magnificent temple on earth, but you are familiar with the damp darkness of the catacombs. For you, this is not a cemetery. This is home, where you learned your first prayers, where you saw your parents whisper prayers, where gentle eyes taught you about a good God. Not only Christians. Pagans also brought their lives down here. They placed graves with burial objects, oil lamps, ceramic jars, jewelry, as if to continue another life on the other side. Some catacombs are so elaborately decorated that you wonder, did people believe that death was just a door, and that real life began beyond? Catacombs, therefore, are not simply cemeteries. They are strange intersections between life and death, between hope and despair. People descend not just to bury, but to continue connecting, to maintain the rhythm of life when the ground is full of danger. If you listen carefully, you will feel a faint singing echo in the distance, perhaps a hymn that once sang here when the community gathered in the dark. And then you wonder, did those sounds never really disappear, but still linger in the air, waiting for us to find them? In a place where the living and the dead coexist, the boundaries between the two worlds seem to melt. This is another Rome, a Rome of silence, but also of life. A Rome that history rarely mentions, but is always right under our feet. Discoveries reveal Roman secrets. As your eyes adjust to the darkness, you begin to realize the catacombs are more than just cold corridors. They are a giant book, with every wall, every niche, every carving a page. The question is, do we have the patience to listen? On the musty wall, a hastily carved Latin inscription appears. Aurelia, my little daughter, sleep in the Lord. Just a few words, but enough to convey the pain of a father who has lost a child. There are no more cries, but the letters still tremble, as if the father had engraved them yesterday. Further on, you come across frescoes, faded but still alive. A woman with her arms outstretched in prayer. A family gathered around a meal. A fish, small and simple, but a mysterious symbol of early Christianity. Each painting is a fragment of memory, telling the story of ordinary people. They loved, they lost, they hoped, just like us today. There were more strange discoveries. Some of the tombs contained animal bones, as if a sacrificial ritual had taken place. Elsewhere, ceramic jars with traces of wine still on them were found, or oil lamps that had not burned out, as if someone had left in a hurry and had not returned. Could this be evidence of rituals interrupted by dangers lurking above ground? Then there were the tombs engraved with incomprehensible symbols, interlocking circles, six-pointed stars, or even images of half-human, half-animal. Scholars have debated their meaning for centuries. Were they symbols of some mysterious cult? Or were they just strange pranks by an unknown hand? It seems that the darkness always holds more questions than answers. One of the most chilling discoveries is that the tombs were built so densely that they were stacked on top of each other, cramped and suffocating. This shows the desperation of the plague, when death came so quickly that people had no choice but to hastily bury the bodies underground. If you listen closely, you can imagine the sound of the coffin carts rolling across the stone floors, the gasps of the survivors as they were hastily buried, and the muffled sobs swallowed by the darkness. But amid the grief, the catacombs still contain something strange: hope. Every epitaph, every painting, every symbol says, "We do not disappear." Even though the body has turned to dust, the memory remains, and the belief continues to be passed on. And then you realize, the catacombs are not just about death. They are about life. The lives of small people in a giant empire. People who do not let history forget them, even if only a faint mark remains on the cliff. Part 2. Whispers of the Taboo. The cults of Rome. If the catacombs were a haven for death and faith, underground Rome hid something else: secret cults. While above ground, the magnificent temples dedicated to Jupiter, Venus, or Mars were always shining brightly. Underground, other, more strange, more violent rituals still took place in the dark. They were called mystery cults. They were not as public as traditional religions. There were no crowded squares, no soaring temples. They existed in silence, in closed rooms, in narrow underground vaults, where only the chosen ones could enter. Among them, the most prominent was Mithraism. Temples to Mithras, Mithraeum, were often built underground, simulating a cave. The stone walls were damp and cold, the oil lamps flickered, and in the middle, a strange statue. Mithras killed the sacred bull, the blood flowing out to become new life. Those who joined the cult had to go through many levels of trials, from enduring darkness, experiencing hunger and thirst, to symbolic rituals with blood. Only when they passed were they considered reborn. Imagine a narrow, dark stone cellar, lit only by the light of an oil lamp. In the middle of the room was a carved statue of Mithras, killing the sacred bull, Tauroctony. The blood from the animal flowed down to the ground, giving birth to crops, water, life. The Roman soldiers knelt, heads bowed, hands clenched as if swearing absolute loyalty. Joining Mithraism was not easy. One had to go through harsh levels, from raven, bridegroom, soldier, to potter, the supreme spiritual father. In these rituals, some were subjected to the ordeal of fire, some endured hours of darkness, some drank blood symbolizing rebirth, all to prove that they had died as men and were reborn as warriors of Mithras. In the dim light, you could imagine the slow beating of drums, the soldiers chanting oaths, the sound echoing off the cliffs. They believed that Mithras was there in the darkness, giving them the strength to overcome battle and death. In contrast, the cult of Isis brought the softness and mystery of the East. The believers gathered in a room filled with incense, the white smoke curling up like mist, making the oil lamp light shimmer. On the altar, a statue of Isis wore a cloak, her eyes looking down as if to see into each person's soul. The Romans sought out Isis because she was the goddess of resurrection. She had searched for the body of her husband Osiris and brought him back to life. The story brought comfort to those who were suffering and lost. Mothers begged her to protect their children. Widows asked her to guide the souls of their loved ones to the other world. To the thunderous sounds of Egyptian music, drums, reeds, rattles, the faithful sang praises to the goddess. The melody was not from Rome, but from far away on the Nile, but it touched the hearts of the Roman people, making them kneel before the statue of a foreign god. They believed that Isis was the mother, the goddess of resurrection, who could heal the pain and guide the soul to the other world. Even many noble Romans were attracted to this Eastern mystery. If Mithra brought discipline, Isis brought comfort, and Cybele, the Great Mother, brought frenzy. The ritual of worshipping Cybele was a storm of sound and blood. The drums pounded, the trumpets blared, the dances spun dizzyingly. The devotees screamed in frenzy, falling into a state of ecstasy. But the most terrifying were the blood sacrifices. Some devotees cut themselves, letting their blood drip onto the altar as a gift to the Great Mother. Even priests devoted to Cybele castrated themselves, considering it a way to abandon their mortal egos and become eternal servants of the goddess. In the eyes of Orthodox religion, these rituals were crazy, horrifying, completely contrary to the solemnity of national sacrifices. But for the participants, it was the moment they felt closest to the divine, where they transcended their bodies and became one with the universe. Rome was a polytheistic empire, but it was these cults, Mithra, Isis, Cybele, that gave rise to a world of secret, profound, and sometimes terrifying beliefs. They existed alongside the glorious pantheon above ground, like two veins, underground and above ground, coursing through the heart of Rome. Come with me into the secret rituals and beliefs of ancient Rome. In the flickering light of an oil lamp, secrets begin to unfold. Not everyone can witness them. Many rituals are reserved for the chosen ones, believers who have passed the test and been accepted. For them, the moment they step through the heavy stone door is the moment they enter another world. In Mithraism, new believers are led into a narrow, dark shrine cave like a trench. They are blindfolded, kneeling in silence. The only sound is heavy breathing and the smell of burning candle wax. A torchbearer walks around. The light flashes, reflecting on the statue of Mithras, plunging a knife into the neck of a sacred bull. Suddenly, cold water is poured over the heads of the initiates, like a flash of death. Immediately after, they are given a bowl of wine mixed with the blood of a sacrificial animal. Drinking it was an oath. From now on, they were no longer the same people, but were reborn as warriors of Mithras. In that moment, their eyes lit up like fire, swearing together. Each word echoed in the heart of the stone, like a promise to the universe that they had been born again. In contrast to the harshness of Mithraism, the ritual of Isis was filled with symbolism and emotion. In the dimly lit room, the sound of reeds and drums rang out softly. Worshippers dressed in white, holding oil lamps, walked around the altar. In the center, the statue of Isis was covered with a cloth. When the priest slowly lifted the cloth, the whole room fell into a silent cheer, as if everyone felt the presence of the goddess. They knelt down, whispering their secret pains. A child who died early, a husband who never returned, a heart that could not find comfort. In the long song, they felt as if Isis had heard them, embracing them with invisible wings. For many, it was a moment of healing, a moment of rebirth, not through blood and violence, but through the belief that the goddess's love could overcome death. But if Isis brought tenderness, Cybele instilled a frenzy in the hearts of her followers. Her ritual exploded like a storm. The drums pounded, the trumpets blared, the shouts echoed throughout the stone vault. The followers whirled in the dance, spinning until they were soaked in sweat, their bodies exhausted. In their excitement, they used small knives to cut their flesh. The blood fell on the stone floor, soaking into the altar cloth. There were priests who, in a state of ecstasy, abandoned their masculinity to dedicate their entire bodies to the goddess. To outsiders, this was madness, even horror. But to them, it was liberation. In the moment when blood mingled with the drums, they believed they had crossed the boundaries of humanity and touched the source of the universe, the Great Mother Cybele. Whether it was the dark oath of Mithras, the gentle prayers to Isis, or the bloody sacrifice to Cybele, they all had one thing in common: secrecy. They were not for everyone. They created a special feeling that only those who entered here could touch a truth beyond orthodox religion, and that was their appeal. Humans have always craved the forbiddance. When the stone door closed, when there was only the drums, the singing, and the darkness around, people believed they had found the true meaning of life. The secret rituals seemed to echo only in the dark underground, but their influence spread throughout Roman society. They were like underground streams, unseen but powerful enough to change the face of an empire. Mithra. The soldiers' faith Mithraism was especially popular in the military. From soldiers on the wild frontier to officers in the barracks of Rome, people turned to Mithras for strength and unity. The ranks of the cult were like a spiritual version of military discipline. A soldier, after undergoing the initiation rite, felt that he was no longer alone on the battlefield. Beside him, his comrades were not only brothers in arms, but also brothers in faith. This solidarity was sometimes stronger than loyalty to the emperor, and that is why the rulers were always worried. If the soldiers placed Mithras above Jupiter, or even above Caesar, what power would truly rule them? Isis, goddess of the marginalized, while Mithras attracted male soldiers. Isis opened her arms to women, slaves, and those left on the margins of society. She made no distinction between rich and poor, noble and humble. Anyone who was in pain, anyone who needed comfort, could seek Isis. This shook the inherent order of Rome, where men, especially free citizens, were always at the center. Now women, who had no voice, found power in the rituals of Isis. They sang, they prayed, they believed they were seen by the goddess. For Roman society, this was both strange and dangerous. Cybele, crazy cult and political power, the bloody rituals of Cybele made the Roman ruling class wary at times. But at the same time, it was associated with the idea that Rome is eternal. The Romans believed that Cybele, with the power of the Great Mother, protected the city from enemies. At one point, statues of Cybele were brought into the heart of Rome as a political talisman to calm the people in times of crisis. The contradiction is strange. A religion that is considered crazy and dangerous, but becomes a political tool when necessary. Rome can suppress, but Rome also knows how to exploit. And so, those crazy drums never stop. What all these secret sects have in common is, they give people an experience that Orthodox religion does not have. In the national temple, you are just a grain of sand in the crowded square, offering sacrifices according to the available rituals. But in the underground, you are chosen, reborn, seen, and heard whispers from the gods. And that is the attraction that makes these cults never disappear, even when they are monitored, suppressed, or even banned. In the heart of a vast and harsh empire, people still yearn for a secret, private, and sacred belief. Underground Rome, therefore, is not just the darkness of the catacombs. It is also where Roman society reveals its truest aspirations, the desire for power, for love, for integration into the universe. These aspirations not only change spiritual life, but sometimes even shake the throne. Part 3. The Clash of Worlds. Oppression and coexistence on Earth. Rome was a pagan city, polytheistic, brilliant, and glorious. Its people believed that the power of the empire was tied to the protection of the gods Jupiter, Mars, and Venus. Every military victory was celebrated with blood sacrifices, and every emperor was worshipped as a living god. In that picture, the emergence of Christianity is like a dangerous crack. Christians refused to offer incense to the statue of the emperor. They refused to participate in public sacrifices. In the eyes of the government, that meant betraying Rome. For the Romans, if someone did not sacrifice to Jupiter, it was like refusing the protection of the city. For a society that considered pax deorum, peace with the gods, a condition for survival, Christianity was a threat. History records many bloody episodes. During the reign of Emperor Nero in 64 a great fire burned down almost the entire city. Nero blamed Christians, making them scapegoats. Some were crucified, some were thrown to lions in the arena. Some were burned alive to illuminate the emperor's banquets. These were cruel moments when the catacombs became the only refuge for the survivors. However, the conflict did not always erupt into persecution. There were periods when the Roman government almost turned a blind eye, allowing Christianity to coexist. Pagans and Christians lived in the same neighborhoods, traded and worked together. They could avoid talking about gods, but they still needed each other to survive in a crowded city. There were catacombs where pagan and Christian symbols were found side by side. A cross was carved right next to a sun, the symbol of the god Sol Invictus. This shows that, even in conflict, there is still a cross-pollination, even a fusion of beliefs. The conflict between paganism and Christianity, therefore, was not just a war of faith. It was a collision between two ways of looking at the world. One side believed in many guardian gods for each area. The other side believed in a single and absolute God. One side honored power, authority, and glorious light on the earth. The other side sought salvation in darkness, in silent prayer, but they still had to live together. In the same city, on the same land, they could not completely eliminate each other. Paganism continued to dominate politics and public ritual, while Christianity quietly grew underground. Each side knew of the other's existence, and that very existence made Rome even more of a place of unprecedented hidden and secret conflicts. The religious persecutions in the Roman Empire left some of the most painful marks in human history. Under Nero, after the terrible fire of 64 AD, Christians were turned into scapegoats. They were blamed for burning the city, fed to wild animals in the arena, crucified, burned alive to illuminate the emperor's banquets. In the eyes of the world at that time, they were rebels. But in the memory of the community, they became martyrs, testifying to their faith with their own blood and death. In the 3rd century, under Emperor Decius, persecution flared up again. A decree was issued. All Roman citizens had to publicly offer sacrifices to the traditional gods and to the emperor himself. Anyone who refused was considered a traitor. Thousands of Christians were arrested, tortured, and executed for refusing to light a stick of incense. But the more they were forced into the darkness, the more resilient the Christian community became. In the catacombs, they continued to meet, to pray, to share bread and wine. They whispered hymns even though they knew that the slightest noise could bring the Roman soldiers down. It was in the darkness that they found the light of unity. Each fall did not weaken the faith, but on the contrary, became a flame that lit the way for those who remained. The blood of the martyrs became the seed for the next generation, and from there, the small community, trembling in fear, grew closer and stronger. The oppression of the empire, instead of extinguishing it, inadvertently nurtured a resilient spiritual strength, a strength that grew silently in the darkness, and that one day it would change the face of Rome. Unexpected symbiosis. Unexpected fusion faiths do not always confront each other. In the darkness of the earth, they sometimes blend, intersect, and coexist in surprising ways. In many catacombs, archaeologists have found symbols that are both pagan and Christian. On an old, opaque wall, the sun, the sacred symbol of the Mithra myth, is carved right next to a cross. For pagans, it is Sol Invictus, the invincible sun, the god of light and life. But for Christians, the sun is also a symbol of Christ, the one who brings eternal life. The same symbol, but containing two beliefs, blending in the same narrow space. In some places, people see the image of Jonah being swallowed by a fish, the story of the Bible, placed next to ancient images of Eastern gods. As if even in the days of persecution, these small communities were not completely separated from the surrounding pagan world. This unexpected symbiosis shows that Rome was not only a place of battles of faith, but also a place of adaptation. People, in harsh circumstances, often seek to reconcile rather than eliminate. And sometimes, It is precisely this blending that makes faith richer and deeper. Therefore, the catacombs are not only a battle line, but also a place of bridges. There, in the cold darkness, a cross can stand next to a sun. A Christian prayer can resound next to a pagan symbol. Not only confrontation, but also coexistence, a strange symbiosis in the heart of Rome. When we leave the maze of tunnels, climb each stone, step back into the light of day, the sounds of darkness still echo within us. The murmured prayers of the early Christians, the frantic drumbeats of the Cybelites, the oaths of the Mithras warriors, all seem to still resound somewhere, even after thousands of years. The catacombs, the underground temples, the secret rituals are not just archaeological relics. They are the living memories of another Rome, a Rome hidden under the rocks, hidden in the minds of men. It is there that we see clearly that history never has only one voice. Beside the splendor of the Pantheon, beside the halo of the Colosseum, there is always another Rome, silent, secret, but persistent. Today, when archaeologists excavate new tunnels, when the flashlight sweeps across a moldy wall to reveal a line of writing or a faded painting, we realize that the darkness still holds untold stories. Each new discovery is a message from the past, that Romans, rich and poor, pagan and Christian, once searched for meaning in the same city, sometimes in the same cellars. The echoes of that darkness still affect the present. They remind us that faith, once rooted in the human heart, cannot be extinguished by violence. They also show us that even in fierce confrontation, people are capable of reconciliation, borrowing, and coexistence. The crosses carved next to the sun, Christian symbols placed next to pagan myths, are the clearest proof of that. And when we step out of the darkness of the catacombs and let the sunlight shine into our eyes, we suddenly understand Rome does not live only on the ground. It also lives underground, in memories, in faith, and in secrets that have never faded. Perhaps it is in the darkest places that we hear the human voice most clearly, the desire to live, to remember, and to believe in something beyond death. Part 4. Echoes from the Abyss. Lasting impact and modern relevance. Hell's legacy. The legacy that remains. When we step out of the stifling corridors of the catacombs, back into the blue sky and bright light, what remains is more than the musty smell of stone and earth. What lingers in our minds is a feeling. Deep down, Rome is still whispering, still holding on to its memories. The catacombs are more than cemeteries. They are libraries of memories, where every inscription, every mural, every silent niche is a page of history. They tell of small families, of parents who hastily carved their children's names in tears, of believers bowing their heads in prayer in the dark, and even of secretive sects that have chosen these places as their sanctuaries. These cults, Mithra, Isis, Cybele, have disappeared from the Roman landscape, but they have left a lasting mark. They helped shape the Roman way of thinking about spirituality. The belief that rebirth, salvation, or union with the divine could be found not in the public square, but in private experience, in secret rituals. And that idea, in a way, still resonates today. As we walk through the cold walls, we understand that the legacy of the catacombs is not just archaeological. It is a reminder that history is not written only on stone columns and triumphal arches. History is also written in the dark, by ordinary people, in trembling prayers and shed blood. Rome above ground may have fallen, but Rome below ground lives on. It lives in the collective memory of humanity, as a testament to the fact that even in the darkest of times, faith and aspiration can survive as solid as stone. Despite thousands of years, the Roman underworld has never been truly silent. Archaeologists today continue to probe the darkness, and each new discovery is like a whisper from the past, reminding us that Rome underground has much more to offer. During a recent excavation in the catacombs of San Sebastiano, a Latin inscription was deciphered. At first, it was thought to be a simple epitaph, a farewell to the dead. But after being illuminated with laser technology, the hidden symbols were revealed. A fish in a circle of the sun. The symbol is both reminiscent of early Christianity and paganism. It is a living testament to the religious fusion of the Roman underground. Not only that, in an unexpected branch of the catacombs near the Via Latina, archaeologists have reopened a small shrine that had been sealed for hundreds of years. Inside, the frescoes are still strangely vibrant. One depicts a communal banquet scene, people sitting together, raising their cups, as if time had stopped for that moment. Another depicts Eastern gods, demonstrating the strong influence of foreign beliefs. Modern technologies, from 3D scanning, infrared radiation, to chemical analysis, are gradually revealing details that were previously invisible to the naked eye. Underneath the dust of time, lines of writing, brush marks, and faint patterns appear, as if the Romans were telling us stories directly. Each new discovery not only adds to history, but also makes this underground world more alive. It shows us that even when the empire has fallen, even when the squares above ground have turned to ruins, in the darkness underground, Rome still whispers. The journey underground has ended, but its echoes still resonate. When we step out of the darkness and back into the sunlight, the images are still vivid in our minds. Cold, damp walls etched with memories, symbols mixed with beliefs, and whispers that never seem to stop. The catacombs tell not only of death, but also of life, of the love, faith, and aspirations of ordinary people in a mighty empire. Secret sects, persecuted communities, all helped shape the soul of Rome, and that legacy is still with us today. And when we look back, perhaps what matters most is not the frescoes or the inscriptions that remain, but the invisible voice from the shadows. A reminder that history is never written only on the bright surface. It is also written in silence, in fear, in hope, and in a faith that endures beyond time. Rome is not just a ruin above ground. Its true world still resonates underground,